So welcome everyone. Welcome back to those of you who have been here before. I do recognize some of the names, so welcome back to those. If you haven't been here before, we are the Marine Environmental Education Center. We are located out on Hollywood Beach, Florida, and unfortunately right now we are still closed. We do have hopes of opening up sometime soon, but until sure to keep really cool resources out there to keep you busy, all of those who are also stuck indoors and want something really cool to do right now. So we started this webinar series where we reached out to a bunch of our really awesome science friends to teach us about environmental issues, marine science issues, some of our favorite creatures. So today we are lucky enough to be talking to Benjamin Studt. He is the Public Outreach and Program Supervisor for the Department of Environmental Resources Management for Palm Beach County. It is a huge responsibility, and today he is talking to us about humanity's relationship with it's important to be conscientious, for us to be aware of nature, to really connect with it. And he is going to be showing us some of his awesome photography today and telling us all of the really important aspects about our relationship with nature and how to be more mindful. We are going to keep everyone muted just so you can most clearly hear Ben talk. But if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, issues, throw it into the chat. Christina and I are here to facilitate and try and help from afar. Otherwise, Ben will be sure to answer all of your questions at the very end. So whenever you're ready, Ben, feel free to share your screen and take it away.
All right. Hey everybody. Just want to thank Taylor and Christina and everybody at the Marine Environmental Education Center for inviting me here to talk with you all today, and want to thank you all for logging on and joining me in what I think is a really topical and really important discussion that we kind of all need to have. And so I'm going to share my screen here and see if we can make this happen. And the other thing that I am going to do is I'm going to stop my video here, and I would encourage everyone else, the little thumbnail, now that I've shared my screen, to minimize that, because for the next 20 minutes or so, we are just going to be looking at photos and kind of listening to what we have to talk about today, which is the nature of us. So the other thing, like we said before, is if you could hold your questions until the end of the presentation. It's about 20 minutes long, and I'll have plenty of time afterwards to answer any questions that you all might have about anything you see or anything we talk about today. So with that, let's get into the nature of us. So what if I told you that the technological advances of the last century that make us more comfortable have actually had a negative effect on our health? Oh, my slides are not advancing. Let's see here. Oh, sorry about that. So what if I told you that what you have been taught about nature throughout your life has been all wrong? That bugs are dangerous or icky, swamps are scary wastelands, and predators in the woods are waiting to attack you when you least expect it. Now, what if I told you that many of these myths are perpetuated by profit-seeking companies whose advertising taps into the emotion most likely to create action, and that's fear? What if I told you that this perfect storm of circumstances has further and further disconnected us from nature? That it has created a society that sees humans as inherently separate from nature, and that it has led us to experiencing a sensory deprived lifestyle that may be furthering some of the mental and physical health issues that plague our society today. And finally, What if I told you that one of the easiest solutions to these problems is all around us, if only we learn how to see it? You see, I believe that for humans to survive for thousands of years to come, we collectively need to relearn what nature truly is, while relearning who we really are, to reestablish our inherent connection with nature, and to see ourselves as an integral part of the natural world, for better or for worse. My name is Benji Studt, and I'm a science communicator and a public outreach leader with Palm Beach County's Environmental Resources Management. But I'm also an explorer and a conservation photographer and a nature-inspired travel junkie with my wife, Kristen, and our four-legged adventure companions. And you're probably going to see a lot of that blonde hair in some of these photos. So what I want to talk to you all about today is some of the science behind the things that I just mentioned. How researchers around the globe are constantly proving different ways that we benefit from simply spending time in nature. And to me, none of this is a surprise. But first, I want to take a whirlwind look at human evolution. So based on what we know now, we humans, Homo sapiens, arrived in our current form at least 300,000 years ago, somewhere in Africa. And to the best of our current knowledge, we spent the next 200,000 years as fairly rare large mammals that hunted and gathered our food in small bands and family groups. Then around 80 to 100,000 years ago, intricate bone tools began to show up, followed shortly thereafter by body ornamentation, shell necklaces, beads, and the like. You see, these things, these shell necklaces, these beads, they are the early beginnings of evidence of symbolic thinking. Even though we had the mental capabilities for 200,000 years, it wasn't until then that we began to think not just about here and now, but about the past and the future, and our own physical identities, as well as the identities of others. This represents the beginning of all our creative thinking that would eventually evolve into art, culture, music, and much more recently, math, science, and technology. And if we fast forward again all the way to the Industrial Revolution, approximately 200 years ago, it was only then, with the invention of steam-powered machines and technologies, that humans moved from an agrarian lifestyle, one that's based on cultivation of the land, to lifestyles that include more urban settings. Then in the blink of an eye, about 100 years ago, the second industrial revolution took hold and an unbelievable explosion of advancement and human population ensued. Indeed, for over 99.9% of our existence, we lived our lives intricately connected to the natural world. It's only been during the last 200 years, and much more so in the last 100 years, that we have predominantly moved inside, into urban centers, into vastly more comfortable living spaces with air conditioning and refrigeration, but at what cost? We're now more than ever disconnected from where our food originates, how our energy is produced, and from the intricate relationship that we have evolved to hold with our natural environment. And this is why, to me, it's unsurprising that science is now starting to understand through research the multitude of ways our bodies and minds benefit when we just go and take a walk in the woods. So let's talk about what science is telling us so far. First, and perhaps most immediately beneficial to all of us during the current pandemic, are studies that show how a walk in nature can reduce stress. This happens almost immediately, with a recent study showing reductions in the stress hormone cortisol after only a 10-minute walk in nature. While spending just a little more time, 20 to 30 minutes, produced the highest drop rate in the cortisol hormone. Walks in nature also help your memory. Study participants who took a memory test before and after walking in nature did 20% better on the second test than those who took a walk in the city. And these results replicate a previous study which found that just viewing pictures of natural scenes had a restorative effect on cognitive function. Nature also makes you feel happier. Researchers measured people's well-being in 3 different environments: urban streetscapes, busy city parks, and wilder forests. They found that people began to feel psychologically restored after just 15 minutes of sitting outside in both the park and the forest. After a short walk, these feelings increased, although slightly more for those in the forest. And the benefits weren't just about relaxation. On measures of vitality, which you'd think might rise in a busy city setting, only nature did the trick, although it took 45 minutes of sitting and strolling. The study participants in the park or forest felt 20% better than their urban street-side peers. And they also reported feeling more creative. Nature also helps to fight depression. Recent studies at Stanford University found that walking 50 minutes in a city park boosted people's moods as well as their working memories and attention, while a 90-minute walk yielded changes to their brains in a way that can protect against depression. That second study suggested that being in the park, but not on a city street, reduced blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, which is a part of the brain that is associated with repetitive negative thought patterns and depression. And then here's some of the most interesting ones: that nature can actually help to physically heal us. And one study showed that people exposed to more natural light healed faster from spinal surgery and reportedly had less pain than others. It seems nature served as a sort of natural drug for them because they also took fewer pain medications. And nature can also strengthen your immune system. Researchers found that women who spent 6 hours in the woods over the course of 2 days had an increase in virus and tumor-fighting white blood cells, and that the boost in immunity lasted at least 7 days afterwards. Moreover, long-suffering dementia and Alzheimer's patients display a decrease in their symptoms following time spent in green spaces. Nature can also help us concentrate better. Taking a break in nature can improve your concentration by giving your brain a well-needed break. Interacting with nature gives your brain a break from everyday overstimulation and stresses, which can have a restorative effect on your attention levels. And another study compared concentration between children with ADHD who played outside versus those who played inside after school and on weekends. And the kids who spent time in green outdoor spaces reported fewer symptoms of ADHD, even when the exact same activities were compared. And a 2009 study showed that the nature effect was similar to the prescription drug Ritalin. Now, nature can also increase your brain function. Taking a walk in nature can increase your creativity. And in one study, participants sat inside, They walked on a treadmill inside. They walked outside, and they were rolled outside in a wheelchair. And walking outside produced the most novel and highest quality analogies in these studies. And plus, it's a quick way to kickstart your brain. As a coffee junkie myself, I found this really interesting. A 20-minute walk outside can wake you up just as much as a cup of coffee. And another one that's really fascinating for me is that nature helps you to age less painfully. And going outside every single day may be the key here. With one study showing that 70-year-old participants who spent time outside every single day had fewer complaints of common aging pains, like aching bones and lack of sleep, at age 77 than those who didn't spend that time outdoors. And another study found that frail elders going outdoors more often were less functionally impaired, more socially active, and less depressed than elders going outdoors less often. Now, multiple other studies have linked natural sounds, smells, and other sensory stimuli to positive effects on our bodies. And I think the point here is that we're really only scratching the surface to understand how important our relationship with nature truly is. And so much more research is needed, particularly in those other sensory areas, into understanding exactly how spending time in nature does things like boost our immunity and help us to heal faster. So I want to go back to where we started for a moment. So think about how beaches around the world are sold to us as these tranquil and safe places. Because that's what the advertising agencies for the resorts, hotels, and cruise lines that dot the coast want you to think when you make your reservation. But the fact is that as soon as you put your toes in the water, you're entering a world as wild as the bottomlands that harbor alligators and the peaks and the valleys of the northern Rockies that are home to wolves and grizzly bears. Now, you all probably have visions of fear running through your head when you think about these habitats, but that's because of our fear-based biases that have been instilled in us. And the fact also remains that all these places are safer than walking down the street of any city center, and certainly safer than riding your bike in the bike lane next to drivers with their heads stuck in their phones. Remember that the vast majority of media we consume is often paid for and driven by profit, not by science or reality. Remember that far and away the most dangerous animal on the planet is us, humans, not whatever creature some Hollywood film or advertisement has made you believe. And for me, ironically, it was sharks and spiders, and both of which I now love. So thanks to Jaws and arachnophobia. But even with this ever-broadening disconnection from nature, I have hope for the future. And that's because I believe we are on the cusp of a natural awakening. The current global pandemic is causing, almost forcing, a new migration of people back to nature, with national park visitation as well as visitation to our Palm Beach County natural areas at all-time highs. And these trends are undoubtedly reaffirming existing connections and creating new connections for folks just discovering their place in nature. And they're positively affecting our mental health at a time when we need it the most. I have hope because we have a thriving public land system all around us where we can relearn what nature is and who we truly are. And I have hope because nature is resilient. You don't hear that a lot. You hear nature is fragile, but I like to remind people that nature is resilient. And our restoration efforts within Palm Beach County and South Florida are showing that. In Lake Worth Lagoon, where 90% of the shoreline of this natural water body has been seawalled, black skimmers just nested on the ground on a newly created island for the first time in Palm Beach County in over 30 years. And that's despite boats speeding by and plastics littering the island where they were nesting, plastics that were brought into the lagoon by stormwater runoff. The wild and scenic Loxahatchee River, one of only 2 federally designated wild and scenic rivers in the state, is seeing increased freshwater flow in the dry season when it needs fresh water the most, due to restoration of our county's natural areas and other public lands within its watershed. And that restoration has also resulted in threatened, imperiled, and endangered species returning to nest on our natural areas. Species like these tricolored herons or this little blue heron chick. Growing up in Loxahatchee Slough, despite crashing nesting numbers of these birds in the Everglades. Like the incredible traveler, the swallow-tailed kite, which has seen its historic range contract by 80%, but is sustaining its population by reproducing and staging for their epic migration on our natural areas. And like the endangered and nomadic Everglades snail kite, raising young on our natural areas as we speak, in a year that saw nesting numbers fall to almost 0 in Lake Okeechobee, one of the bird's most important nesting areas. So today, I want to leave you all with a challenge. Take a walk outside this week. And if you already do, take an extra walk. Like the studies show, it doesn't have to be some epic adventure, just 15 or 20 minutes on your way to or from an errand. And when you go, bring someone that you hold close. Because while the simple act of spending time in nature is beneficial for us, there is no better place to connect with those we love than the outdoors. And we can also further the movement this way by encouraging those we love most to come outside with us. So make no mistake, in 10,000 years, nature will live on and the earth will live on. But the real question is, will our ancestors be around to see it? Now, I believe that answer completely depends on you and me and us all, and our ability to relearn our place in nature, to relearn the nature of us. All right. And there we have what I hope was a little bit of inspiration for you guys to get outside.
It was incredibly informative and definitely enlightening. And I appreciate your message.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how many we had hopping on, jumping off. We went over a lot of different studies in there.
We did. Are you ready for questions?
Sure, certainly, if we have some questions.
I had one. Are there comparative studies done between time in greener areas versus time at the beach, or is that a sort of subjective semantic?
So I think that's a bit subjective there. What's interesting about a lot of the study that's been done so far, and I kind of highlighted it there at the end, is the vast majority of the study has been on reaction to visual stimuli. Mm-hmm. A lot of that has to do with greens and blues, which have that healing and calming effect. And so, at the beach, as long as you can turn around and see some of that green dune vegetation, and you can see that beautiful blue water, then you're getting those benefits. Absolutely. But I didn't reference or find any studies that were really juxtaposing those different environments. It was more time in nature, time in green, time in forest,
Gotcha.
or time in kind of the gray cityscape.
Okay, very cool. And do you have any sort of resources if anyone wanted to volunteer? Are there any volunteers for the restoration efforts?
Yeah. So now we aren't doing any large scale volunteer events right now.
Mhm.
Right before lockdown hit, we had about 100 people out planting those newly created islands within Lake Worth Lagoon, where we then had oyster catchers and black skimmers nest. So really the easiest thing to do is hop on our website. It's pbcerm.com, pbcerm.com. Our volunteer coordinator, Ann Matthews, is an absolute delight and an inspiration. She's one of the most passionate people I know. You can go hit the link to sign up for a volunteer event. That'll bring you to our calendar. She schedules events about a month in advance. Right now, events are pretty light, just because she doesn't do a ton of events in the summer. It's so hot out. But we do events throughout the year that include trash cleanups, planting events, trail maintenance events, and like I said, sometimes some of those mangrove restoration events. We also, once lockdown kind of eases up a bit,
Mhm.
we'll be restarting our Adventure Awaits program. And what that is it's a free guided adventure series.
Mhm.
And so our biologists will take you on everything from sunset hikes to stargazing with some of our adoption partners, like
Oh,
the
wow.
Astronomical Society of the Palm Beaches. They bring their telescopes out so you can go on a sunset walk and then look at the stars.
Oh,
We do yoga in the natural areas down in Boca. Um, I do a photo workshop once a quarter. So I generally pull people into the swamp and we go learn how to take photos outdoors. So there's really something for everybody. Like I said, it's called our Adventure Awaits series, and we'll get that back going too. That's another great way to engage. But you can always also start your adventure at pbcnaturalareas.com. So that's a great resource right on there. It will have a map of all of our natural areas. You can get trail information right on your phone in real time while you're out on our natural areas. You can see where you are on the trail. So a couple of great resources there.
have you developed that into an app for iOS or Android software?
So we didn't do an app. What it is it's just web based. It's browser based. You don't have to do anything online. You don't have to download anything. You just hit the website, and the map will be embedded in the website. And it says click here for full screen. And it's a ArcGIS application that is web based. So all you need is cell service, and you're good to go explore the trails.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for that. Elizabeth wants to know, speaking of your photography class, do you have any advice on how to get those great photographs of wildlife?
A lot of time outdoors, a lot of time. So the key to now, some of them are, I will completely admit, privileged. Like that last shot, it was an ultra wide angle of snail kite chicks in the nest. So we're working under Fish and Wildlife Service permits with researchers at the University of Florida. And they are studying nesting snail kites in our natural areas right now. And so I got to tag along and actually document that monitoring effort. And we're going to be telling that in a photo story that we share in the future. But as far as other pictures of grizzly bears and pronghorns and alligators and different bird species, it really comes down to the time you spend in the field getting to understand these animals' habits, because the key is really understanding how to safely get closer to them, with an emphasis on safety and not disturbing them. So that's a really difficult thing to do. But once you really start to understand their patterns and you understand how close you can get without disturbing them, and disturbing them really means if you're flushing a bird, if it's flying away, if an animal is running away, then you're disrupting it. So the wildlife really comes down to time spent in the field. And I am not a good wildlife photographer by any means. I have so many friends that will spend hours and hours looking at a single bird to get that one photo, and I just can't do that. So when I'm outside, I'm on the move. I'm moving around, which is why landscapes are kind of more my thing.
Makes sense.
A great question.
Brianna asks, are there going to be negative consequences for environmental health with more people going into parks and beaches during quarantine?
So that's a pretty interesting question, and it's one that we've been thinking a lot about. But I think there's certainly a point where a natural environment can get overrun with people, and you have some negative effects. But that's why it's really important just to remember to, be a responsible trail user when you're out recreating. And as long as you're recreating responsibly in areas on marked trails, you can go places like what is it? The Royal Palm area down in the Everglades, or Lone Palm. It's one of the first stops in Everglades National Park. And there are literally people, all over the place on this trail, and there are birds all over the place. Somewhere closer to Broward, it's in southern Palm Beach County. Think about Wakota-Hatchie and Green Cay wetlands, and you have listed bird species that are nesting, 10 feet off the boardwalk. So in some of these areas, there's that habituation, and wildlife gets used to, okay, there's people over there on the trail. I think another thing to remember, because that question has come up a lot, and in fact, we got approached by a couple of news reporters wanting to know, well, what animals are benefiting now that people aren't outdoors? But it kind of speaks to what this presentation is all about. It's that thought process of, we humans are here and nature is over here, and we're separate. But remember, when European contact happened in Florida, in the US, which is where we have the most documented history, what we're realizing now is there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million people in Florida, which is only starting to be taught. When I was in school, it was thought there was a very few people that lived here. But the fact of the matter is, Native Americans had this intimate relationship with the land, and they were part of the ecosystem. They would actually use fire to manage land. They would burn different pinelands to encourage more turkey and deer to show up there. So they were real stewards of the land. So I think that's important to remember is, the answer to nature surviving is not just get people out and leave it be. I think that's really an important part of this presentation is we've got to relearn and understand how we can interact with nature in a positive way. So back to that was a long rant, but back to the original question, as long as you are recreating responsibly on marked trails during the hours in which you're allowed to go there, you're not seeing overfull parking lots, then the wildlife that utilizes those areas is doing just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Don't believe we have any more questions. I'll give everyone a few more minutes. If nobody can think of any other ones, you can email us at meec@nova.edu. That's MEEC, and we can forward them to Benjamin, and he can answer them for us. Next week, sorry about that, Thursday, we are hosting Stacy Brown. She is going to give us a recap of the 1000 Mermaids Artificial Reef Project. She is their current CFO, so I am excited to hear about her marine conservation efforts. Elizabeth, thank you. Everyone's starting to say thank you, so thank you, Benjamin. I appreciate that. And if nobody has any more questions, we will see you guys on Thursday.
All right, thank you, everybody. Get outside.
Have a good day. Everyone go for a walk.
Yes.
Y'all have a good one. Bye.